Well, welcome to today's show. Excited that you guys have decided to join us again. Today, we have a really special show because it's launch time. Really launch time. It's that moment that parents have been praying for and dreading all at the same time because decision time has happened for probably almost all of our students, right? They know where they're going to college. Mom and dad, you know where you're sending off your student. So you're thankful, you're excited, and at the same time, there's some dread, and there's a lot of questions you probably still have that are unanswered on how to launch your student for success in college. And that's what we're going to talk about today's show. Welcome to Committed, the College Admissions Playbook. I know you're excited about today's guest. I'm going to let you introduce him real quick and then, let him introduce himself. So, John, first of all, thanks for wrangling this professional to our show today, but I'll let you introduce our special guest.
So when Rennie and I were thinking of, okay, at this stage in the game, these kids, for the most part, they're all in, committed. Who would be the perfect person to help parents launch them into the wild? And there's no better person. So Andrew Zoronic, personal friend of both of us, colleagues, father of four, great guy, college planner. So he was the first person that we thought of because he is the one that is notorious for dotting the I's, crossing the T's, making his checklist, and shipping these kids off the right way. And parents, I think, underestimate just how many things on the back end go into from the time the kids commit until they actually move in August. So Andrew, appreciate you being here. Couldn't have anybody better. So I know I probably, didn't introduce you the way you would want me to. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. As John had said, I am a father of four kids. For us as parents, it's a time of uncertainty. So as your child is kind of going through this process and they're not sure about picking roommates or, did they pick the right college and everything else, as parents, you have the same kind of doubts. And I remember vividly with all four of our kids dropping them off for the first time. You got to think, are they ready? Are they ready to, take flight? And, as a parent, all you can do is do the best you can throughout the first 18 or so years. And then hope and trust that they go, in the right direction. So again, I am a college planner, but I'm also a father of four. And I do, like I say, have some things to talk about as we enter this phase of getting accepted. Now what kind of thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, I can't imagine a better person to guide us through this because not only of your college planning experience, you're someone I looked up to for sure as a college planner, but obviously look up to as a father as well, because I don't know all of your kids, but I know one of them, and the proof is in the fruit. And she's an outstanding young lady. Andrew, my first question for you is, as you've seen, John and I talk a lot about how this game has changed over the years, right? How have you seen that from your standpoint as a parent and now as a college planner, and the types of things that parents need to be thinking about, the questions they need to be asking, the I's they need to be dotting, and the T's they need to be crossing? How has that changed over the years from where you sit?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is, a simple thing like picking a college roommate. When I went to school, it was completely random. I remember walking in to my dorm room and I met Eric for the first time, and there was no platform, to kind of share information. We really didn't talk to each other prior to that. I remember starting with our son, who is our oldest. It was a simple phone call. They talked to each other. They seemed like they got along, and they decided to proceed, so to speak. And it's gotten more advanced from there. They have sites now where you can get on and you can share your likes and your wants and so on and so forth. To be honest with you, I don't know if any of those sites are any better than just random. I just feel as if you're living and you might be the only child, you might have another sibling, but it's different when you move in with somebody else. They're going to have their space, their things, and you got to have some guidelines on, what to touch, what not to touch, and so on and so forth. So right there, it's a huge change, for kids going from being like an adult, or excuse me, being like a young child to becoming an adult, and how to deal with people and how to deal with situations like that.
I think it's spot on, man, because a lot of these students, they're probably not sharing a room and they're maybe not even sharing a bathroom. And now they're living through that dynamic. Now, question is, Andrew, do you still talk to Eric? You and Eric
Uh,
still friends? No,
no,
Eric.
no, I
Eric,
don't
if
know.
you're listening, call Andrew up, reconnect, and we'll bring you on the show because we want to know what Andrew was like as a college freshman. Now, John, how did you choose your roommate?
It was similar. I mean, I didn't go to school 40 years ago, like some people, but 20
Yeah,
years
right.
ago,
Yeah.
so it wasn't necessarily walking into the room day one, but I think I got a letter in the mail a week before move-in day, and it was the kid's phone number. Called the
Yeah.
landline, talked to the mom because he was a football player already at football camp, and she told me, "Hey, he has a TV up there. He already brought a fridge, needs a microwave." And that was basically the extent of it. And so Andrew brought up some, really good points about the advancement in the technology now. And just to kind of share with the parents, the ones who are not maybe necessarily tech savvy, what seems to be the best way for kids to connect with these potential roommates, friends, whatever you want to call them. So Instagram, which is, one of the bigger platforms, almost every college or university now will have a blank college class of 2028 page. And this is where kids are able, and sometimes they're university affiliated and sometimes they're not,
Yeah.
but the kids can then go in there, follow the page. They can choose to post a picture of themselves with a small bio. They insert their Snapchat tagline or whatever their name is on Snapchat. And that's usually how they connect now. So that seems to be the best way or the most popular way to do it. And then there's another app that's called Zeemee, Zeemee, where it's like Tinder for finding a roommate, as awkward as it is. And for these parents, when they're talking to their kids about it, ask them because it's hilarious. Because so much of this roommate courting almost feels like it's a dating app. It's very awkward.
I like what Andrew said. I'm kind of the blend of both. I'm the opposite actually, both of you. I roomed with my best friend. All right, so my best friend since like third grade, we're both going to college together, and you get to select your roommate, and me and him are roommates. And for 1 year, that freshman year, we were not best friends. We were not best friends. Luckily, our relationship was able to recover, and after we stopped living together, we returned, and he's still my best friend today. But so I talked to him. You don't talk to Eric, but I talked to Ray. But I think what Andrew said is right. I mean, even these quote unquote roommate dating apps, there's no perfect science. But here's what I'll tell you, and I think Andrew and John, you'd agree, it's part of the learning experience. And
Totally.
part of the learning experience to learn to live and with another roommate, to live in the dorms with other freshmen and students that are going through the same process. That's part of it, and I think it's so valuable. As a guy that used to work in higher education, I can tell you that there is so much about leadership, about community, about working through conflict, working through differences that come through living together in the residence hall. So I know as a parent, I'm a parent. I have two daughters. There's a lot of concerns that I have, and I'm sure that John has for his younger kids, and Andrew had for his as they were going to college. But just remember that this is all part of the learning experience. And so if we dive in and try to fix everything as parents, we're kind of robbing them of that learning experience that they have of being in a community together. That's part of the excitement. Now, this is one of the major things that's part of the transition, and you alluded to it a second ago, Andrew, that they're now adults. There's this really funny law that is very serious called FERPA, that starts treating your student a little bit different than maybe they were treated or for sure they were treated in high school. Talk to us a little bit about FERPA and specifically how that can affect, something as serious as health records and health information.
Sure. One of the things that the kids will sign before they apply to school is a release that they won't be able to look at their letters of recommendation, because most of the kids that we work with say, well, I'm going to be able to read it, right? Well, technically, you're not supposed to. Colleges want you to have the teachers write freely and not worry about, Johnny or Sally seeing what they're writing. So that's part of it. But then as they transition to college, I always thought it was kind of funny how the college is willing to share their tuition bill with you as the parent, but you cannot share, or they will not share the grades of your student unless your student signs off on that. So I
Yeah.
always thought that was kind of a weird set of circumstances. And to take it a step further, one of the things that we suggest and I had it with our own kids, is to make sure that you get a medical power of attorney. That's a very important document. As they turn 18, they enter an area where their medical records do become private. So if they should slip and fall and hurt themselves in a serious way, as parents, you might be 5, 6 hours away. You're trying to decide at 11 o'clock at night, should I make the drive? What should I do? Technically, hospitals don't have to give you any information. So if you do have a medical power of attorney, you can then send that to the hospital, and then they can share with you, say, it's really not that bad. You can just wait till tomorrow morning. He's resting comfortably, or whatever it might be. But that's kind of one of the other tips that I would give, is make sure you do consider at least a medical power of attorney.
Yeah, I remember when I was the dean of students, and unfortunately, maybe a student would be in a disciplinary issue, and mom or dad would call up and want to know about it, and I couldn't share with them. I couldn't share with them the disciplinary issue, and they were hot as can be, and they started getting mad at me. And I'm like, all you have to do is have your son or daughter sign a form or come in with them, and we can have a conversation. But I can't. They are treated by the law as legal adults that are independent. And I think what Andrew said is really interesting. Yeah, you still get the bill, but the student is responsible for that bill. This is not something that automatically mom and dad are accountable for. They are choosing to be accountable for, or they're choosing to be a part of. But this is the student, and an unpaid tuition bill, unpaid, residence hall bill. Those are things that are on the student. And so, Andrew, you've been really purposeful with your kids about how you help them understand credit and how to help them build their credit through this process. Tell us a little bit about how you parented through that and led your students through that.
Sure. One of the very first things, and again, as a parent, you don't want to do this the week before they leave. Try to do it early in the summer, maybe right after they, walk and graduate from high school. But you might want to consider getting them a credit card. And that doesn't mean co-signing for their credit card, but have them apply for at least a credit card. Now, this is assuming that your student's going to be responsible with it, but we happen to pick Discover. They don't have a large credit limit. It's 500 to $1,000 or something like that. But it's kind of nice because, if they're in a pickle and they don't have the funds, at least they can rely back on that credit card. And I remember specifically our youngest daughter called on a Sunday late. She needed to buy a book at the bookstore. She didn't have the money for it. So I said, why don't you just put it on the Discover card? So it's not there for them to order pizzas on a Friday night, but at the same time, it's nice to have. And again, as a parent, you just need to be comfortable with them having access to a credit card. But it's really important because once they do graduate, they're going to probably be looking for a car or even looking for an apartment. And it's nice that they have some kind of credit rating or some kind of credit established, so that if they can, provide them with information so that they can get the apartment or the car that they need.
Yeah. Yeah.
To piggyback off of that, establishing credit, what I've seen is a lot of clients, and as we know, anybody who applies for the FAFSA, every student is awarded that $5,500 direct Stafford loan that is in the student's name, no cosigner needed by a parent. So for even the parents who might not need to finance the money, I've seen a lot of cases where the parents want to accept it to then have those funds in the student's name to then start establishing credit after the fact.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think that, there's so many ways to look at this, but I think that we have to realize financially, your student is now independent and is establishing their credit with or without a credit card, because they are responsible for that tuition bill. That's their name on it. If they're taking out student loans in their name, like John just mentioned, that's on their name. That's not requiring your co-signature. And one of the worst ways to get your credit destroyed is to default on student loans. It's just one of the worst ways. So I love what Andrew's saying. Instead of being reactive or not even talking about the establishment of credit, being proactive with your student in any ways, whether it's through credit cards, whether it's through student loans, however, to talk about their credit, to talk about building their credit history. So when they do graduate, when they are leaving college, or maybe when they're looking for their first apartment while they're in school, they are empowered and they've set themselves up for success for those types of financial situations. I can remember as a freshman in college, I took out a credit card without my mom knowing about it, and real quickly I established about a $500 debt. And I'm a poor college student. That was like a mountain of money. And I go to my mom and in the spring and say, hey, I got a little credit card problem and I want to go to spring break. Well, my mom taught me the best lesson she could. She goes, it looks like you're not going to spring break. Looks like you're working over spring break to pay off that credit card debt. She did not bail me out. And so, at the time, it was like painful. I lost out on going to spring break. Back then, it took a little bit of work to make $500. It took more than spring break, I can tell you that. But it was such a great lesson, because at a young age, through my mistake, I learned how to really, really take control of credit cards. And so I think the being proactive, Andrew, is so critical. They're going to go on college campuses and they're going to see credit card opportunities everywhere. How are you protecting and how you're building your student up for financial security and success is key.
If I can just interject, I think, the theme of today is just, it's about becoming responsible. It's about being proactive. For me, it was, I remember my first week in school, my class got canceled. Well, I ran to the phone. I was getting ready to call my parents and I started thinking to myself, what are they going to do about it? So then as a new freshman, I didn't know. So I walked around the hallways looking for somebody to talk to me. And I said, hey, what do you do when a class is canceled? And they said, you should talk to your academic advisor. And I said, wow, what an interesting thought. So then I went and introduced myself to my academic advisor and I took care of the problem. He helped me, obviously. But the point is, for the first 17, 18 years of your child's life, you're handling a lot of this stuff. It's kind of time to let that go. Make sure that they're doing these things. And for me, I have an engineering degree, a lot of calculus, a lot of science. To me, college was more about growing up, becoming responsible, how to deal with people, how to deal with situations, and again, I really think that is the important part of college. It's really about kind of growing up and becoming responsible.
It's not only what you're learning in the classroom, it's learning to be a responsible, successful member of your community. I think that's critical. Now, another way that these students are becoming independent, and that's a scary thought for lots of us as parents. But another way our students are becoming independent is we got to make sure about how that changes their coverage on our insurance, right? Whether that's health insurance, whether that's what's covered in their home insurance. Talk to us a little bit about how you've navigated that with your kids, Andrew, but also the college planning kids you talk with and work with today.
Okay, when you get your first tuition bill, everybody's pretty excited. They're looking at all the items and making sure that you pay it on time and everything else. Well, the closer you look at it, you might see a little line item, called health something or another. And unless you drill down on it a little bit deeper, most colleges will actually add insurance coverage to your student's tuition bill. They don't ask if you have coverage first. They just add it. And then you have to actually, your student again, has to go in and decline the coverage. That's an important step because for us, it was about I think it was $1,400, $1,500 a semester. So it's not an inexpensive insurance policy. But if they are covered by your own medical coverage, you can have the coverage waived. But again, your student has to take that time to do that and make sure that it's done. Again, it's a simple step, but if you don't do it, you're going to end up with a very expensive health insurance coverage that you may not need. The other thing is, I remember vividly watching these kids carry these big 75-inch, uh, flat panel TVs in, bigger than I ever owned. But the point is, they have a lot of expensive electronics, equipment, and stuff like that. I always suggest that you reach out to your insurance agent, assuming that your student is covered. It's part of your homeowner's insurance, but as long as they're a full-time student, doesn't matter if they're living on campus, off campus, but at least their stuff is covered. So two things you want to make sure you do is, if you do get a bill, make sure you check it. And if it does have insurance and you are already covering your insurance or your student with insurance, make sure you have them decline that. But then also make sure that you do have some kind of homeowner's policy or renter's insurance, whatever it might be, that can cover your student while they're at school.
Such an important thing to check on. I love this. I love this, though, of your comments too about taking time to look at that tuition bill. John, what are some other things that you've noticed that, besides maybe those health fees or that automatic health insurance, what are some things you've noticed in your work as a college planner that students and parents really need to look through to see, are they opting in for something accidentally that they could opt out of and really save them some dollars?
When looking at the financial aid package, and we could have an entire segment on
Yeah.
evaluating a financial aid package. There's going to be so many different numbers. And sometimes it's confusing because I think these schools, on purpose, they will include a grant, a scholarship, and a loan as an award, quote unquote. So typically, a financial aid package will list cost of attendance, which may or may not include tuition and fees, room and board. And then they will also have additional items such as transportation costs, anticipated personal expenses, anticipated books and supplies. So when I'm working with my families, it's really diving into that financial aid package and looking at the numbers, because a true standard cost of attendance usually appears much higher than what they will actually owe the school. So digging through the numbers to see what are the direct items or the direct billable items. So what is the money that we have to directly pay to the university? And then what is the money that we can anticipate we may or may not spend, which is pretty subjective depending on the type of kid, the environment they're in, how much they like nice things, so all of those vary. And then next phase, okay, so we have our bottom line, what is the cost? And then we go into the awards. Even though I would say the majority of Americans know that a loan is not free money, because it is categorized as an award, it tends to confuse people. So then we have to kind of differentiate, okay, so this scholarship is free money, this grant, free money, this loan, which we know is a loan, at let's say 5.5%. So then what the total financial aid award usually ends up being is $5,500 less than what the number shows, because that is money that will eventually need to be paid back. So really being vigilant and digging through those, looking at the numbers. And to both of your points earlier about the financial responsibility, one thing that I think ends up being way too common that could be very detrimental is for the families that are going to be fairly soon taking out private student loans. It's incredible how easy it is to get a student loan when you have somebody willing to co-sign. And I'm going to throw out just, round hypothetical numbers. And I was actually a product of this, so I can speak to it far too well. Let's say a student and a family owes a school $20,000 when it's all said and done. It's very easy to then apply for a student loan and say, well, you know what? Okay, so I need my 20 for school, but I don't know if I want to work first year. I really want to, dedicate myself to my studies, or I want to transition well. I don't want to worry about working a part-time job. So maybe I'm going to add $3,000 or $4,000 onto that loan as spending money. So then what happens is the loan, which goes directly from the bank to the university takes their balance and then will issue the student what's called a refund check for any money that exceeds what the balance was. And as an 18-year-old at the time, hey, this is an easy $4,000. Not knowing that there could be a 12% interest linked to this.
They got some
So,
flash cash automatically.
right? And, as a kid, and when your parents are not, overly involved, it's very easy to do. And if you do that every year for 4 years, here's an extra $20,000 where you're paying 12% interest on, and you're paying 55 on a $20,000 loan.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, that's how quickly things can snowball if you're not careful.
Yeah. I think, I think this is great advice for, how parents and students can partner together. It's a partnership still, right? We're not saying that, students are out there just on their own, and, it's a partnership. And I think, this is great advice around whether it's medical issues, whether it's about insurance issues, whether it's about, God forbid, student discipline issues. I would go on to say what John, you just mentioned is really, really key. Understanding the difference between anticipated cost and real costs. They are not necessarily the same. I love what Andrew suggested. There are things that are going to be on that tuition bill that are automatic, but you can opt out of them. I know at the university that's in our backyard, you are automatically charged for their orientation camp. You don't have to attend. But you can opt out of that and save several $100s, and you don't even realize if you're not looking and you say, I'm not going to that camp. Well, you're still being charged for it. So walking through in a partnership with your student through this process is critical. And it's about what Andrew has practiced, what he continues to share with his families as a college planner, that through this partnership, we're helping your student, and you're helping your student become and grow and being a responsible adult. And that's what the launch is all about. It's a moment that you've been praying for, right? You've been excited about for them, but now there's a little bit of trepidation around it. And it's just changing the relationship a little bit. You're a partner with them, helping them grow in their responsibility. As we close out our time on this show, I want to ask Andrew and then John, what's your last piece of advice to parents? As there's students about to launch, what's one thing maybe we've talked about today that you want to make sure to put the explanation point on, or maybe it's something that hasn't been brought up, so parents really feel empowered to help partner with their student as they launch into college?
Okay, one of the things I was going to mention, and thank you for giving me this time, and I appreciate you guys having me on, but selective service. As a male turns 18, they are required by federal law to apply for selective service. Now, at first you say, what difference does it make? We've actually had a student, and there's a law in our state that says if you do not apply for selective service and you want to come to a public institution, they will actually charge you full out-of-state tuition. You will not get the benefit of in-state tuition. So that's something also to kind of, watch for, that if you do have a male student and they are 18, they may want to do that. I don't think it's across every state, but it is specifically in our state where you do have to sign up for selective service, or it's going to cost you.
And it can limit your abilities to access financial aid. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons, but I think the most important reason that Andrew gave it is the federal law that you need to be applying for selective service. Great point that can sometimes be, because you don't get a letter in the mail reminding you.
No.
This is something that you have to go do. John, how about you, my man?
It's going to be easier said than done. And my kids are 3 and 5. So hopefully I'll be able to practice what I preach, 15 years from now, 13 years from now. As your kids are going off, as hard as it will be, as much as you will want to hover, as much as you will want to stalk the university's Facebook page, trust that you have put them in a position to succeed going forward.
Yeah.
So much, emphasis on controlling the narrative and keeping them safe. This is the time where they're ready to fly, and you want to be there for when they fall, because they will, but trust that you've done everything right and they're able to go out and thrive.
I love it. I think that's great advice, is that they're going to stumble. They're going to fumble. They're going to fall, but they will fly. They will fly. And, the best thing we can do is encourage them along the way, support them along the way. And hopefully, John, the two of us, can have the successful proof in our great parenting that Andrew does with his 4 amazing kids. So Andrew, thanks so much for joining us on our show today. Really appreciate your wisdom, appreciate your expertise. And I hope for our listeners that it's been encouraging and empowering to you as a parent, that, man, it is exciting, and you should be excited for your student. You should be celebrating all that they've achieved thus far in life. But we understand there's some fear. We understand there's some trepidation. But these are some of the best practices we can share with you. But we'd also encourage you this: talk to some other experts, talk to some parents who have been through it. Put yourself in some community, and they can help encourage you and support you as you walk through this journey with your student, especially if it's their first time in college. Thanks for joining us. Next time we have another special guest for you, because here's the question that you all have. It's the number one question we get. How are we going to pay for this? And we're going to have a special guest for you next time on Committed, the College Admissions Program.
Thanks for stopping by.